What are some intriguing original theories that you have? Story one. Okay, so this is a crazy conspiracy I thought up one day. I don't actually believe this. We've all had those moments where we pull our phone out of our pocket, swearing that we felt it vibrate, but see that it was nothing. And one of the biggest drawbacks to NSA recording data from cell phones cameras is that most of the time it would be in a pocket taking a black picture. What if every time you thought you felt the phantom vibration, it was actually the NSA beginning to record? And it was a trick to get the phone out of your pocket to see your surroundings, even if just for a short time. Story 2. Tales of trolls and giants and such are remnants of our encounters with other hominids from before they died out. There have been smaller, broader, bigger, and just plain different human species through the ages, and stories about them survive to this day, although distorted by the oral tradition. There was actually a Discovery documentary about dragons that basically said the same thing. The show's conclusion was that dragons represent an amalgam of threats the animal world posed to us. So, the size and reptilian features were indicative of the crocodile. The wings came from birds of prey. The long, serpentine aspect came from large snakes. The fiery breath comes from venomous snakes and big cats. Apparently, they have awfully bad breath. And the intelligence associated with dragons also comes from the cunning of the big cats. Story 3. In the 1970s, Congress banned tobacco advertising on TV in the USA. I've always felt the tobacco lobby was behind this. If they didn't want it to happen, it wouldn't have. The advantage to them is the multi-millions in savings. It would only work for all companies if none of them cheat, and making it law assured that. It is known that all the stoma and premature baby commercials are paid for by the tobacco industry. I think there's a couple of reasons it's this way. One, people often disregard the commercials because they're annoying and overdramatic. When you think something is annoying, you'll typically side with the opposition. Two, they probably get tax write offs, as it's a public service announcement. Story 4 had a pretty weird idea about the universe. It involves a hyperdimensional object passing through whatever dimensional plane we are supposed to be on nowadays. Just like if a 3-day sphere passing through a 2-day plane would show a circle that expands and then contracts if you existed in those two dimensions. Uh, for argument's sake, let's take our universe as 3 days. A 4 days hypersphere passing through our 3 days plane of existence would create a sphere that expands, then contracts. Disclaimer: this is based on no scientific evidence. It's just the product of a math student who got high one time. Story 5. That one of the main reasons people in developed countries have such a high amount of mental problems has a lot to do with the concept of having options. We all have to work and do things we're not really fond of. Responsibility? However, when you're being told through Disney movies and people overall that you can be whatever you like, if you wish for something hard enough, you'll get it and such, you'll start to expect it. You're also used to seeing people do the hard work part during a 30-second montage, so we never get a complete comprehension of what hard work really is. So when we have all these options and few of us truly reach it, we start being discontent. We keep questioning ourselves. Why am I here in life? Am I trapped? Why is life against me? Then it snowballs into just worse problems. While at the same time, people who have little are forced to be happy with what they have. I do want to add that I'm not saying that all poor people are happy, nor do I deny that all the mental issues in developed countries have just as much to do with it actually being registered. There are more things to the story, but in many cases, I think the options paradox makes it a lot worse. Story 6. When I heard that Jehovah's Witnesses firmly believe that only 12,000 people from each of the 12 tribes of Israel would go to heaven, I couldn't understand why they would go around recruiting people to their religion. Surely that would reduce their chances of getting to heaven? After a while, it occurred to me that it would make sense if it was actually a multi-level marketing system. The Jehovah's Witness symbol? A golden pyramid. Former Jehovah's Witness here. Only 144,000 go to heaven to rule alongside Jesus and the angels and all that. The rest get to live on paradise earth. There will be no illness, aging, death, sin, ECT. Everything will be perfect, and humans will all use one language and live alongside the animals, blah, blah, blah. They don't believe in heaven or hell afterlives. So going to heaven means nothing, and the goal is to stay here on earth, at least that's how I saw it. I do like your theory, though. As it stands, the whole organization is being controlled by a handful of wrinkly dudes. So it makes perfect sense to me. Story 7. That depression is not a problem with the individual, but a symptom of society. I don't think people are getting enough love and support with how modern Western society is organized, and it's only gotten worse in the last few generations. It's not crazy original, but we tend to look at mental illness in a vacuum instead of taking the big picture and seeing that something very important is inherently lacking in most people's, most notably, children's lives. We had a lot of trouble with Western mental health workers who came here immediately after the genocide, and we had to ask some of them to leave. They came, and their practice did not involve being outside in the sun where you begin to feel better. There was no music or drumming to get your blood flowing again. There was no sense that everyone had taken the day off so that the entire community could come together to try to lift you up and bring you back to joy. There was no acknowledgement of the depression as something invasive and external that could actually be cast out again. Instead, they would take people one at a time into these dingy little rooms and have them sit around for an hour or so and talk about bad things that had happened to them. We had to ask them to leave. Story 8. Watching True Detective kind of planted this theory in my head. This theory that we've already lived this life. And when we die, it's like hitting the reset button. The specific quotes are, "Someone once told me time is a flat circle. Everything we've ever done or will do, we're going to do over and over and over again. And what if some day or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, 'This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more.' Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, 'You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine'?" Story 10. I think that beyond the furthest visible point in our universe, there is just more space. So space just keeps going and going and going, and eventually you'll get to another universe. But we can't see that universe because we are too far away and the light has not yet reached us. Therefore, there are most likely billions and billions of other universes, not parallel universes, just other ones. That's basically the multiverse theory. Under expansion, areas of negative vacuum energy, physicists of Reddit help me out. I can't think of the correct term, cause another pocket of inflation. As these are expanding faster than the speed of light, information cannot be passed between them, and so we perceive an edge. But if you could somehow get out and look at the multiverse, you'd see something akin to bubbles in a bath, with each bubble being a universe spawned by inflation. Story 11. Time is going backwards, but we can't tell because our memories are still working as if it goes forwards. You and everyone you know are long dead, and you aren't you, but a person from the future who, in one of the multitude of ways that people in the future entertain themselves, has chosen to live the life of a human in the past. To get the full experience, you opted to have your memory erased until the person you're playing dies and you get out of the pod or whatever. There are so many people in the future doing this that even if you're nobody special, the odds of you actually being the first you are tiny. The universe isn't expanding. The space between things stays the same, and everything is getting smaller. Story 12. I have a theory that during the work week, people drive like jerks because it is their normal commute, so they know every little bump in the road. They expect others to know the same and get upset when other drivers are slower and less aggressive with red lights and lane changes. Fast forward to the weekends when people drive in areas they don't normally drive and at different times. So you're going to the store, bank, friend's house, or wherever that you normally drive. Mom and dad and the three kids are trying to find the beach or zoo or museum and figure out where to turn and park. They think you're in jerk for driving a bit over the speed limit on their butt, while you think they're stupid for riding the brakes and nearly turning at every corner. My thoughts on this first started during my brief time as a police officer in a town of a few thousand, surrounded by bigger cities in the Bay Area. I noticed most traffic accidents were between a local who was upset about the terrible driver who just hit them, and the out-of-towner trying to find their grandpa's cemetery or the car dealerships. I never pulled over a speeder who admitted they were lost or looking for something. They were usually on their way to or from work or home. I also have a theory that our first encounter will actually just be a human of the future, lost through a wormhole, and coming back to home coordinates. Although that one I may have heard somewhere. I've thought that for as long as I can remember. Story 13. Time slows down for an observer when he is near great mass, or moving at great speeds. This leads to my theory that the universe is infinite. Think about it. Put yourself 2 seconds after the Big Bang. That very next second may have in reality lasted for billions of years, due to the telescoping nature of time. Now move back 1 second. Maybe the time dilates to 1 trillion years. Now move back to the first second. I posit that space-time, being even more tremendously massive and fast-moving than in the third second of time, grows exponentially greater and greater back to the point of origin. Lindsay Lohan put it best, the limit does not exist. Story 14. That the idea of good luck and bad luck is really a social experiment to control people. It's subtle, but if you don't want people opening a wet umbrella in your building or house, start telling people that it's bad luck. You don't want people walking under a ladder because it is dangerous for them. And the guy on the ladder, start telling people it is bad luck. Don't want glass shards in your carpet from a broken mirror. Bad luck to break a mirror. Needles on the ground. Good luck to pick it up. If you want people to do or not do something, just add a superstitious element and see what happens. Story 15. Each conscious being is constantly shifting up and down along a chain of infinite parallel realities. This shifting goes unnoticed because the adjacent realities are carbon copies of each other with one minor difference. We interface with this phenomena through our subconscious minds. Either that or every moment is one being that lives outside of time, experiencing itself endlessly from every different perspective that ever existed. Story 16. Physics has answered many questions about the universe, but one that still looms large is a very basic issue. What is stuff made up of? It was once thought that atoms formed everything, but then it was found that atoms have distinct parts: protons, electrons, and neutrons. And those too have parts, and perhaps their parts have parts. But if we were able to shrink down far enough and look at the very basic building blocks of matter, the veritable Legos of the universe, what would they look like? One leading theory states they would look like strings, one-dimensional loops of pure energy. These strings oscillate in different ways, and each oscillation gives rise to a different particle. The whole universe, then, is a symphony of these strings, and we are all different manifestations of the same building blocks. But what if the oscillations that give rise to what we perceive as particles weren't coming from tiny strings, but from the fabric of space itself? We would all then be manifestations of the vibrations of the cosmos. The concept of discrete matter would fall away, and we would be left with the understanding that we are all the universe, and the universe is us. We are not separate or distinct from it, but composed of it in every way. Story 17. Millions of years ago, humans built great civilizations that advanced far beyond where we are today, but finally realized that all this progress got them nowhere, and so dismantled all of their cities and removed all evidence of their civilization's existence to live their lives with nature. Millennia passed. People forgot about their past and began building again. Story 18. What if all the ocean's water is from acid reacting with metals? If you were to combine, say, hydrochloric acid and sodium, you would get water and salt. As far as I understand, the different oceans have different types of salts. So what if the Earth had oceans of acid, and over several billion years, meteoroids delivered metals into the oceans? Ocean, Pangea, creating most of the water and salt in the oceans we have now. Story 19. The popular conception of time travel is wrong based upon an idea and thought that I have had for some time. Our conception of time travel does not account for the rotation of the Earth. If you were to travel back in time in 1 hour, they would find that the Earth had rotated 1040 miles, and you would therefore appear 1040 miles to the east of where you think you should appear. But wait, there is the orbit of the Earth, which needs to be taken into account. If you travel back in time 1 hour, you will find that the Earth isn't at your location when you appear, but that you are floating in the vacuum of space 66,000 miles away from the Earth. I hope that you brought your spacesuit. Actually, you will appear in space further away than that, because you also have to account for the movement through space of the sun. which the Earth orbits. If you travel back in time 1 hour, depending upon where in its orbit of the sun that the Earth was relative to the direction that the sun was moving, during part of its orbit, the Earth moves in the same direction that the sun is moving. So you would have to add the speed of the Earth to the speed of the sun, or subtract it if it is moving in opposition to the sun's direction. You will appear in space, but you will find yourself between 492,000 and 626,000 miles away from the Earth. Then there is the movement of our galaxy, the unfortunately named Milky Way, that would also affect where you would appear if you were to travel back in time 1 hour. Our galaxy is moving at a rate of approximately 666,000 miles per hour, so you would appear between 40,000 and 1.3 million. I am doing this in my head, and now it hurts. Miles from the Earth. Story 20. Ever heard of floating point precision numbers? They are used to represent real numbers in computer memory. They are commonly used for physics or geometry in games and simulations. Interesting fact about them is that when you start operating on very small numbers, some precision is lost. And now my thought, what if we live in computer simulation, and effects known from quantum physics like can't precisely measure speed, position, are just merely a consequence of floating point numbers used in our universe simulation software? Story 21. Have a few. 1. Regarding energy use economy. Invest in the infrastructure for solar panels on highway roads or on highway medians. Make it a federally funded public works program, employing the unemployed and stimulating the economy, while creating a reusable energy potential. You can easily get 20 to 50 years of public work programs out of it. Simultaneously, connect these to charging stations for electric cars, lessening our dependence on oil. Also, with regards to fixing the American deficit, cut tax breaks for the super rich. Cut them out altogether and have anyone grossing over $1 million a year pay a flat 30% tax. You can even make it more easy to swallow by making it a temporary tax hike to close the deficit. Remove income taxes on small businesses for the first 5 years, while in business to grow local business. Create a subsidized health insurance program for small businesses that is federally funded. The employer pays into the program and gives employees an option to take a slightly higher work wage and seek private insurance. The key is to subsidize it enough for small businesses to afford. Do away with the Electoral College and make all voting for elections based on the popular vote all counted electronically. In addition to this, cut down the Senate's power and allow the individuals to vote on each bill. Senators can still serve a purpose to educate people on different issues, but each bill is voted on by the public. To maintain a checks and balances system, allow senators a vote that perhaps counts for more than one regular person. Perhaps that will allow for a more accurate view of the consensus among the citizens that the bills will actually affect. Also, cut out riders on bills. Allow each single issue to be voted on instead of clustered. This would create more rapid change and prevent party agendas from mucking up productive bills that both sides actually agree on. Story 22. I'm not sure this will make any sense to anyone, but here goes. The exchange of information is in many ways a real thing. Whether it's useful knowledge, directions to the nearest subway station, or whatever information there is that is sent from one person to the next, it is a true transaction. Maybe not by some scientific definition, but the fact remains that it's there and you can prove it's there. One person knew something, the other didn't, until the first decided to share it. What I love about this maybe obvious fact of life is that if you start to think about this, you realize it is something that doesn't have a soul. There is no ego, like an electric current flowing through a wire. It's just there. No information in a person's head before. After the transaction, it's just facts, information. A Pakistani woman could tell an Israeli soldier something. Forget about the context, whatever it may be, she tells the guy. It could be, my kids are in that house, don't attack us. Or it could be, sure, I have a lighter. It could be anything. Defensive, aggressive, full of love or vile hatred, trivial or life-threatening, anything. The fact remains that there was an exchange of information. Not from a power source to a machine like the current through the wire. Not from a Jew to a Muslim or a man to a woman. Just information as you can perceive it. From A to B, human to human. Information does not have an ego. It doesn't judge. It has no will, no intentions. It's just there. In some sense, it doesn't have to do anything with us still, and it connects us all. I love that idea. Story 23. I call it the bacteria in the universe. Humans spend a lot of time studying the stars, black holes, and the universe in general. Whilst we know a lot about the individual structures, I've always thought that there must be unifying nature to it all. The analogy I make in my head is that of bacteria living in the human body. The bacteria has no concept of what a human is. It has no way of knowing that it exists in a living, breathing animal with free will. It just does its particular job in the stomach. The bacteria is a great deal less intelligent than a human, so it can't understand the significance of the human it lives in. Now let's apply that to the universe. We live in the universe and understand parts of it, but just like the scale of the bacteria's intelligence to ours, imagine how small ours could be to a sentient being, the size of the universe. This has nothing to do with God. It's just that we would never have the capacity to communicate or understand it on any level. Even if a bacteria had sentient thoughts and wanted to communicate with us, it couldn't. Story 24. We exist in water. After I saw a video of a thicker water creating its own current at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, I have had continuous thoughts that we're in water, yet we don't perceive it that way. When you think about it, water and air are extremely similar for many obvious reasons. It's just a thinner, lighter water. Space is even a lighter liquid than the one we exist in. I think in this idea and thought process, we will discover easier modes of transportation or other breakthroughs in other scientific realms. Or I'm an idiot. Also, I perceive our solar system to be a metaphor for life itself. The solar system is a production line. The sun burns and eventually explodes out particles of mass, which eventually piece together forming a planet. As the mass moves on in its existence, it begins to take form and reaches the zone of life. It eventually gets old and dries out. After it dries out, it begins to expand with glasses until those glasses have been exhausted. By now, it's long dead and becomes a cold, bony mass that continues to disintegrate more and more. Story 25. I took chemistry in 10th grade. I learned the basics of predicting reactions, etc. Then I thought, hey, we live in a material universe. Can't everything be predicted? Even if we don't possess the infinite knowledge necessary to figure it out, isn't everything predetermined? I was sure I was the first person in history to formulate the philosophy of nomological determinism. Turns out this guy Laplace came up with it a couple centuries prior. Independent discovery, I suppose. But then I learned about quantum mechanics and didn't know what to think anymore. Some years later, I became an epistemological skeptic, eventually a nihilist, and didn't care about philosophy anymore whatsoever. So I threw it all away and became a dancer.